Hello and welcome to The W. My name is Lisa Slayton and I will be your host for today's discussion. Chief B is a short documentary about Rochelle Brackney, the first African-American chief of police in Charlottesville, Virginia. This film chronicles her mission to bring faith-filled justice into a historically divided community. With me today is my friend Pastor Cynthia Wallace, Executive Pastor of Bible Center Church, and also the Executive Director of the Oasis Project. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely.
Great. So the film was really compelling in a number of ways as we look at this African-American woman who has a history of being in law enforcement, 30 plus years, who ends up as the first African-American woman as the chief of police in Charlottesville. What do you think some of her challenges were as she walked into that?
Some of the challenges were, how do you keep your faith in situations like that, right? Yeah. When everything about you, everything that you stand for is probably being challenged. And how do you, just make sure that justice and what is good for the community is at the forefront, but also, just standing strong in your faith.
We're here in Pittsburgh today, and Chief B is actually from Pittsburgh and spent a lot of her career here. You know her because she's attended your church, the church that you and your husband pastor. If you know anything that you'd be willing to share about her faith journey, I think that would be really interesting, because it doesn't seem like this was her first rodeo
No.
dealing in a volatile environment.
And I think the word that I would use to describe Rochelle would be authentic.
Yeah.
And so her faith is real. And so we saw that, as a member of the church and Bible study. And, you mentioned the practices as in, you're praying in your car. And that's not something that, oh my goodness, I'm going into this situation, should I pray? That seemed to be really just her every day in every situation. What does God say about this? And really relying on Him for wisdom and understanding. And I think, that has just probably been part of her career, right? As much as all of the official training, it's like, I can't do this without God. And so He's always there and just, bringing Him to every situation.
She stands above the fray a little bit and has what I would describe as a non-anxious presence. And yet I'm sure in that environment, she faced all kinds of challenges to her leadership and, just to being a woman, not the least of which is an African-American woman.
Right. And I think that's why calling is important, right? That the fact that God has called you to a position. And the one thing that I know about Rochelle, that it was never about, a better job or more money or anything like that. It was really, is this the place where God has called me to serve?
I loved her definition of justice, which she described as the absence of disorder. When a place where people can thrive and flourish, that's a just environment.
We think about justice, right, in an individual level, right? So this person did this, there should be consequences, and that would be justice, right?
Sure.
You have to think beyond that.
Yeah.
It is what is good, what is God's will for this situation and all people, and knowing that He has a heart for order and peace and flourishing, and that we're working to make those things happen. And undoubtedly that is what Rochelle was doing in that community. And so I think it is allowing yourself to be used by God and to move beyond this individual definition and help people see that there's something broader. There's a larger sense, a community, a global sense that we're working towards.
Part of peacekeeping is creating an environment where people feel safe to go about their daily business and do their work and run their storefronts and their shops. She seemed to do that it seemed effortless, but I'm not so sure it was. In an environment like that, what are some of the things you would think she was paying attention to as she was navigating through that environment to keep her city safe so people
Sure.
could go to work. And
Sure. I mean, I think there's that side of it. There is the, just the physical safety piece, right? So that, property isn't damaged. People feel safe on the streets,
Yeah.
going to and fro. But I also think, one of the things that I saw her doing in the video was building relationships.
Yeah.
I think what happens when we see so much unrest is that people just like, no one hears me, no one sees me,
Right.
and now it just comes out kind of in this explosive manner, right?
Yeah.
But when we allow people in times of peace to talk about things that are bothering them, I think it helps kind of in advance to diffuse some of that energy, knowing that I've been seen, I've been heard, and that, as a community, we're working to right some of those things that have been wrong for a very long time. And so I think that's part of her work as well. So not only the response to violence and unrest, it is how do we keep these things from happening on, on an ongoing basis.
I just wish there were more Chief Bees in the world.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
She is this peacemaking presence that's good for the community, good for the economic environment, and good for the people that live there. So thank you, Cynthia.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was so good to have you all here today. Thank you for joining us for this discussion, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time on The W.